All right, let's get to the news of the day. Dan Byer shared it with us 20 minutes ago, 25 minutes ago. So Jim Harbaugh is suspended from coaching in games, the last 3 games of the regular season. Now you're like, okay, it's 3 games. Well, remember, he served a 3-game suspension of 4. That got whittled down to 3. A 3-game suspension to start the year. But those 3 games, I could have coached Michigan to a win. This is Penn State, Maryland, and Ohio State. Now, Ohio State's at home. Maryland's at home as well. Maryland's on the road, so I got next 2 on the road. And look, Maryland can compete with you probably for a half, and if you completely spit up all over yourself. I don't believe Harbaugh calls plays per se, definitely not on defense. I don't think he calls them on offense, but I do think what I was told a long time ago is a lot of voices of chatter, and so maybe he has to settle some of that chatter. But he's a huge presence. To not have him is interesting. Any other punishments? Any other thing that's interesting, Dan?
Oh, no, that's the crazy thing is the Big Ten says they'll have no additional comment with the penalty. They ended up releasing the discourse between the conference and the school's response. But in their general statement to announce the penalty, the only penalty that was handed down was to Jim Harbaugh, and it's for that 3-game ban for the regular season games. And again, he's allowed to practice, attend practices and meetings throughout the week.
So he's responsible. It's his program. I generally agree with that. It doesn't technically punish the players, and you don't go back and vacate wins. But it should have some level of effect on some in-game decisions. You know, I guess it's WWHD. What would Harbaugh do? What you're asking yourselves on the sideline there. And this is it's interesting. And by the way, Jim Harbaugh going to get credit for all of these wins and all these losses, and yet there'll be 6 of the games he doesn't even coach. It's nuts. Off top of your head, do you agree with this punishment? Do you think this is a fair punishment?
No.
Why not?
Because I don't think that it does anything in the grand scheme to prevent Michigan from doing these allegations or any other school from these allegations. It gave them, the reason the rule is in place is because they feel it gave them a significant advantage in these games over the last couple of seasons. And you now are basically just saying you can't be with the team for 4 hours on the next 3 Saturdays. That's it. And so I do not believe it. But, and this is not to couch it, this is what we talked about before we knew the penalty of this is how you can try to appease some if you're the Big Ten, still protect Michigan, even though I know that they're furious over this. I think that they should be over the moon for this penalty. You're going to get Harbaugh back for possibly the Big Ten title game in the college football playoff, and your national championship hopes are still alive. But it's just, to me, Doug, it's either nothing or it's, all right, that's it for this season, no Big Ten title game. You move on and move out for what they can do as a league and as a conference.
Here's what I think the whole thing's a bunch of crap, to be totally honest with you. Now, was this a lot more intricate than simply sign stealing? Because sign stealing happens literally every week and every college football campus. You know, but it's the advanced scouting that's the issue, right? That's the issue. It's the advanced scouting. Now, I would say where I would say it had to be more, because in regards to what they've actually done, considering there's a rule against it, but there's no defined penalty against it, that one I really struggle with. I sit there and go like, I don't know, Stallions took the fall. You fine the school. I would say you suspend them for a game. Would be reasonable to me. But the one thing that I would say tips it more into the multi-game suspension was the initial response from Michigan was like, we didn't do this. There was defiance first. Other than that, they basically gave 3 different answers. We didn't do it. Well, you don't have your facts straight. Well, we did, but everybody's doing it. That was the order of it. So they got caught. They got punished. And then now it's fascinating. How many points is Jim Harbaugh worth? While I think he's worth points in terms of his brain, knowledge, leadership, I would also tell you that the energy you get, and look, you're going to come out hair on fire tomorrow anyway. You're playing in front of 105,000 people. Is it 105? 105, 108 at Beaver Stadium. So there is a benefit to it, and there's also a negative to it. You've nailed it if you're Tony Petitti if everyone's unhappy. Right? If Michigan's unhappy, which they are, and fans will be like, what? That's it? Then you've nailed it. If the rest of the Big Ten is happy with this, again, I don't care what fans think. Like, fans, you don't matter, because if you're not a Michigan fan, you're going to hate Michigan. If you are a Michigan fan, you're blinded by your love. I'm just talking about other people that matter. If no one's happy, then you've nailed it. Yes, Jason Stewart.
So, I think you just answered the question for yourself, but as usual, I'm most interested in how these things are covered, how these topics are covered. And it was almost a unanimous reaction when this came out that you had, which was, this is no big deal. Everyone does it. Nothing's going to come of this. 6 or 8 weeks ago, you said on the show, the most disarming words in the English language are, I was wrong. And I've already seen kind of a couching on the national scope of how people are going to react. And it sounds like you're not willing to admit you were wrong. But is there anything that's going to come out evidence-wise or punishment-wise where you're going to be like, okay, this was a much bigger deal than I had thought. This is a precedent-setting event that will forever change this whole thing. Or is this just always going to be kind of a witch hunt? And I hate using witch hunt because the former president has kind of used this as a thing that people just hang on to. Right. So you could face 800 indictments and it'll always be a witch hunt. Will this always be a witch hunt for certain people?
Well, these are all really good questions. There was a lot of questions there, by the way. I like going one by one on them. The first thing is, if Michigan wasn't the best team in the league, this would not be a story. This would not be a story. But they are, and they've also turned it around the past couple of years. Now, Connor Stallions, how long was he with the program, Dan Byer?
It's dated back. I thought it was to like 2020. I thought around that, but I mean, he's been there was there in 2021 and 2022.
Right, but my point was, did it predate the turnaround? Like, everybody's like, "Oh, look at the turnaround in Michigan," and we also remember the really down year was the COVID year, and that year Northwestern was the best team in the freaking league. Up was down, day was night, black was white. Like, Penn State and Michigan were terrible that year, so that one year doesn't really count. I think this diminishes what they've done at Michigan in most people's minds? I do. I also think that if we're honest, there's a lot of this where you're feeling like Michigan's getting a lot of the heat because of what happened with the Astros. Right? The Astros was after the fact. It came out and nothing happened to anybody, really. Right? The managers lost their jobs. That was it. The managers lost their jobs. And in that one, the players were actually participating. That's what's crazy about that one. The players themselves were participating in sign stealing illegally and alerting their teammates, and nothing happened to the players. In college, we almost always want to protect the players as if they're in a bubble and nothing can ever happen to them. And anytime there's an NCAA violation, it's like, oh, what about the players? So we've actually done that, not hurt the players. They still have the opportunity to make plays. I don't think it's as strong as a witch hunt, but I do think that it's because people don't like Harbaugh. It's because Michigan's been really, really good. Because they're really arrogant there too. Like, let's just be honest, they're completely arrogant. Big Ten as a league can be really arrogant, if we're honest. I think there's a bunch of different factors. You have a new commissioner. Right? It's not like you have an old school commissioner who's been there for years and years and years, and he takes things in stride. And we can be kind of easily offended by these things. So you're asking me if I'm saying I was wrong. Is there anything that could come out that would make me change my mind? Yes, this is what could come out. If I knew, if they have Harbaugh's cell phone records and digital footprint, and none of them link him to Connor Stallions in terms of anything. Like if it does link him to Connor Stallions, if there are texts of, hey coach, I'm out on the road, even if it just says, hey, I'm out on the road at the Purdue game, or I'm out at the Ohio State game, whatever, then I would be wrong, because then I think he has, because by my estimation, here's what happened. He was given a budget. He was told to figure out what the other team's sending in. Is it dangerous to not say how you do it? Probably. Hey, man, don't care how you do it. Find out what the signals are. And he went about doing it. And you could say it's brazen, or maybe they just thought, like, this is a stupid rule. Why are we're doing advanced scouting? It was all about funding. We have the funding now. We're going to go do it. But if there's contact and connection between the head coach and Connor Stallions, then yes, I would absolutely change my mind. Absolutely.
I do think that, to Jason's point, that it has become a witch hunt. There was the Blake Corum connection with Connor Stallions that came out. Michigan, for the record, Doug, has stated that anything that Stallions did prior to May of 2022 was as a volunteer, because he was hired in the spring of 2022. But there's a photo of him in the locker room holding the 2021 Big Ten Champions Trophy. So he was a member of the program at that point. But I do think, from the 3-game suspension earlier, we're not talking, just about a cheeseburger here, the COVID penalties that, you brought up, and all of this then opened the door for everything else. And because of the lack of punishment that everybody else feels, because Michigan's not happy that he got 3 games, everybody else is unhappy that he only got 3 games, that I think that you will continue to see more and more of. More stories coming out. And honestly, the more come out, the less that this actually becomes. I mean, right? Like, because now you're just saying, like, all right, now you're just throwing, bleep against the wall here in trying to nail him. That's, I get what you're saying, and agreeing with, if nobody was happy, then Petiti got the penalty right. I just don't think anything changes, and I think Michigan should be happy with this. I think this is a huge win for them. They had a national championship season that was in jeopardy of not even coming to fruition, and that is still alive through all of this.
That part I will agree with. You can definitely take a win from it, but you lose him. You almost, if you're Michigan, you're like, man, why don't you keep us out of the Michigan State game? We could have just shown up and won that one.